Hello, welcome. Today we are going to talk to one could make the statement that this is the most popular guest that I get the opportunity to speak with on multiple occasions throughout the year, and I believe tonight's conversation is going to be very beneficial for not only student athletes, but parents, families as well. You know him as the head coach of the Townsend University Tigers, Matt Tyner. Coach Tyner, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Walter. It's always a pleasure to come and be on your show. And before we go much further, I'm definitely not the most popular. I've listened to your show before, and you've had some marquee names on this show. So thanks for that accolade, but I can't wear that one.
Okay, I think you can when we get the responses from the fellow coaches as well as the athletes. But tonight, I think parents need to understand. You know, you and I had a chance briefly to catch up while you were in town playing in Brookline and Northeastern University, and as always, the visits are too short. But several months ago, I was fortunate to have Coach Tyner mail me an advance copy of our discussion point to start our conversation this evening. And a little background, and for those of you that may be just watching or listening to Coach Tyner for the first time, aside from being the current head coach at Townsend University, former recruiting coordinator, assistant coach at Richmond University prior to that, Coach Tyner was an elite student athlete at the University of Miami, as well as minor leagues with the Orioles. And his book, Fast and Hard, which you see here on the screen, which will be released, Coach, on Amazon at the end of the month?
May 2nd. May 2nd.
Okay, so May 2nd. So I know a lot of people that I've spoken with have ordered advanced copies through thrift books or Amazon or things of that nature. You can do that online, I'm pretty sure, at any of your book retailers. But, Coach, give us a little background on what led you, A, to write the book, and B, you know, I know that I've read the book, and it's extremely forthcoming. And I would love to know, did you find that to be a cleansing, therapeutic? What was the basis or foundation that led you to write the book?
Okay, well, let me go all the way back. If somebody is interested in purchasing the book, they can go to my website, which is www.tynereffect.com. I'll personally sign the book and mail it myself to you. So that's one thing. Secondly, I was raised in a small town in Illinois by the name of Decatur, Illinois, about 100,000 people. And growing up, I lived right on the cusp. To the south of me was 95% all black, and to the north of me was 95% all white. I played basketball, I played street football, I played wiffle ball with 3 black friends, and they became, my brothers. So throughout the course of our life, one young man lost his life to a staph infection. One young man is a car financer for a dealership back in Springfield, Illinois. And the other young man, who we ultimately lost to the, remnants of a stroke, finally took his life, was going to go play football at the University of Missouri with a stop in a JUCO in Iowa, but some terrible things happened to him. He had never touched a drug, never touched a beer or a glass of wine or nothing. And 2 kids picked him up from the airport and made 2 stops on the way to drop him off at his dorm. And the next day, the FBI stopped and said, "Come with us. You're under arrest for distribution." And he was like, I. And that changed the course of his life. He then became a career man in the Navy. And his last 3 years, he was ordained as a minister and came out and had his own church. So while the recruiting coordinator at the University of Richmond. Bill Helm was his name. William Helm, Reverend Helm, knew me from start to finish. And we're at lunch after an Easter service that he performed, where I was an unbelievable participant in the church, Resurrection Baptist. And we're at lunch, and he said, I'll try to do him the best I can. Matthew, you know you need to write your story, boy. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. Okay. And he's like, no. Your story will help somebody. Look at what you've done. Look what you've become. Look at where you are right now. You need to write your story. And I mean, write it right now, because I ain't got much time left on this earth right now. And I want to see this book come to fruition. And I said, okay, I'll take a look. I'll think about it. He said, no, you get one of them dictaphones and you write it and you talk into that dictaphone and then you play it back. And then they've got programs where it'll transpose everything. And, I'm technologically stupid. So I tried that. I said, okay, well, I'll start and I'll think about it. So I'm recruiting, right? And you've got windshield time when you're recruiting. So I'm going to talk into this recorder, and then I'm going to play it back for myself. So I get to where I'm going. I'm jumping on a jet. So I put the earplugs in after talking for about 2.5 hours, and I'm listening to myself talk, and I'm like going, that sucks. That's brutal. Who would ever do or buy or think or talk about that? And so I shelved the idea, and I told my wife at the time, I said, Bill wants me to write my story. And she said, oh, I think it would be great. I do think it'd be great. Why don't you do that? And I said, I don't know. And we were living apart. She was watching her father in Indianapolis, and I was a recruiting coordinator in Richmond. And I lived in this duplex with this young couple, Nate and Gabe Spring. They were on one side, I was on the other. I said, Nate, I'm going to start writing a book. I said, but would you kind of be like the editor, just read and tell me what you think? And he was like, okay. So I just started pounding keys, Walter, and I'm serious. I went all the way back to when I was 14 years old, what my life was like prior to 14, and then what my life was like at 14. Because at 14, I started drinking, I started drugging, and it pretty much ran my life from that point until I was 42 years old. And with each and every keystroke, another subject matter, made its way to the page. And as Nate would read it, he would say, oh my God, it's incredible. I don't, the resounding question, and I'm sure you thought about it the same thing. How are you still alive?
Exactly.
And the answer to that. It's all the grace of God. I mean, he spoke to me so many times, and I deferred. I said, no, not now. But then there were obvious times when I said, if you just get me through this one, I'll be better. I'll quit for a while. As long as you get me through tonight. And that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to cleanse myself one last time. I've gone through the recovery program that's offered through Alcoholics Anonymous. And in changing that aspect of my life, I relieved the compulsion for drugs as well. And I've been clean ever since. We can get into it as deep as you want to go, but I wrote the book so that somebody may be able to identify with me and purposely go seek change in their life. Because, and I know this is cliche as hell, but if I can do it, so can you. So can anybody. And that's the purpose, and that's the reason why I wrote the book.
Well, it just so happens I was going to express to, not only the listeners and the viewers that once I picked the book up, I literally couldn't put it down, to the point where I was up and looked at the clock, in what had started as a 5 p.m. approximate start. I was into the 2 a.m. and Professor Rosenthal echoes the same sentiments here. He says, great book, Matt. I couldn't put it down. Another Miami Canes fan is going to be ordering a book and would like for you to make sure that you put "Go Canes" on the caption. But he was, he's very aware of who you are and who you were as an athlete, student athlete. But what I really wanted to get into, because I've had this with regard to my younger brother, who unfortunately passed away due to drugs and alcohol. But he was sober for 13 years, and there was a struggle. And I watched how it affected his life. And I would like to talk to you about your life from the age of 42 on, because what I find to be so fascinating is you were still trying to overcome, um, life's obstacles and hurdles. And I would love for you to talk about that, because, we hear a lot in society of people changing their life, and things tend to stay rosy. But you've had what I would consider to be a lot of curveballs, pun intended, with regard to just life. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about that, as far as within the book, talking about, rising above and eyes forward and having a positive outlook. That exemplifies who you are to the T. But I would like for you to discuss that with regard to coming from where you came from to where you are today.
Well, obviously, people are probably sitting there wondering, where did I come from? And I came from a world of alcoholism and drug addiction. My drug of choice was cocaine. It's not something that was prevalent at Miami. It was just prevalent in my life. It was not hard to find in the city of Miami during the 1970s, if you can imagine what that was like. And I had a very close friend of mine ask me one time, why did you do cocaine? And I said, because I liked it, and that's pretty much why I drugged and I drank. Yeah, to escape reality. I didn't have the best childhood. I raised myself since I was 14. I started driving a car when I was 15. My father died, in 1981 at the age of 49. I was 22 years old. 23 years old. And when you lose a parent, okay, then there's, whether you like it or not, if you lose them at that early age, there's really no role model for you, right? So you're on your own, kind of saying. That's where that statement I use all the time is yo-yo. It means you're on your own. So no excuses. I mean, I was an educated young man. I knew the difference between right and wrong. I just chose to go wrong. So in 2001, I had been out partying all night, and I was in the lovely company of three ladies that were working with me. And I'll be very frank, I thought this was going to end up in one of those penthouse forum situations. When all of a sudden at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I said, I'm out of here. And I had purposely positioned myself about 2.5 blocks from my condo in Indianapolis. And I found myself walking home by myself. And I could think, I could almost rationalize that, you know what, I think I've drank myself sober. And I fell asleep. I couldn't sleep. I woke up and I said, I'm going to go to 9 o'clock mass. So I went to 9 o'clock mass, slipped in, sat in the very back pew, right behind the junior high school football team. And I'm thinking, I'm safe here. Well, the priest walks up behind me, and my good friend Tom is talking to the priest over my shoulder and says, Father Dan, why are you coming to the game today? And he says, no, I'm doing the 12 o'clock mass instead of the 9 o'clock. And so Tom says, well, that's too bad. I was hoping that you could, give us a pep talk before the game because we're playing St. Barnabas. Long story short, we go through all the rituals of the Catholic Church. And when it comes time for the homily, the doors open and Father Dan walks down the middle of the church and he says, I don't know why I'm here. I was going to do the noon mass, but because he motioned for the priest, the presiding priest, to just sit still. And he got it and he started talking. He talked just everything was clear as a bell, and I said, what's happening here? Long story short, he talked about the 10 Samaritans or 10 lepers that had asked to be healed, and 9 or all 10 left, but then one came back to give thanks and praise to Jesus. And he said, your faith has healed you. And when he said that, I said, his faith has healed him. And I remember going down for the Eucharist and the wine, and I had the body of Christ, and then I went for the goblet and went to take it to my lips. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't. I handed it back to the person, and I walked out. And I walked out, and I was in tears by the time I got into the visitation area. And there was Father Dan, and he said, "Hey, can I help you, my son?" I said, "Yeah." And it was for the first time in my life, I went in and I talked to him, and I told him, I think I have a problem drinking, and I may have a drug problem. And he tried to convince me that there was moderation, that you could actually do moderation. And I said, okay. But I called that my spiritual experience, almost my spiritual awakening. I needed to party 2 more times, and I did. I partied on Tuesday night and I partied on Thursday night. So bad that I got so sick on Wednesday. My mother, because I was running a cell phone company over in Illinois at that point in time, a Nextel distributorship, she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I don't think I'm all right. I'm in bad shape." But I went to work. Thursday came, 24 hours later, I was ready to do it again. So I did. And that time I took a car across an elevated railroad track and probably flew in the air about 100 feet with a good friend of mine next to me. But God, as our co-pilot, landed all 4 wheels on the road at the same time. A little runway squirch, and we were off to the next strip club. Finally, we got to that club, and it was closed. We couldn't go in, so I got us a hotel room, and then I drove him back to Decatur, Illinois, and I went to his bar later that evening, and I sat down for my usual vodka tonic, absolute and tonic, about that much vodka and about that much tonic. And I pulled it to my lips, tasted it, and I asked the bartender, I said, "Man, this vodka is bad." And she said, No, it's absolute and tonic. Showed me the bottle and the tonic, same thing. And I took one more taste of it. I said, "Try it." She tasted it. She goes, "Tastes good to me." Walter, I'm telling you, it tasted like poison. I paid her. I slid the drink back to the bartender, and I said, "Timmy, I'll see you later. I'm out of here." He goes, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I said, "No, I don't think so." I called my wife. We were separated at the time. And I said, "I got something to tell you." And she said, "What do you got?" And I said, "I'll tell you in person. Meet me at O'Charlie's in Indianapolis at Glendale Mall about 9:30 on a Friday night." She goes, "You should be out partying." And I said, "Absolutely." I said, "But I just wanted to tell you," because she had quit drinking September 8th, 2001. And this is October 19th, 2001. And I said, "I'm done." And she goes, "You're done?" I said, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm going to quit drinking." And she said, "Okay, good for you. Anything I can do to help?" I said, No, I got this on my own." The next day, October 20th, 2001, which is my sobriety date, I quit drinking. The problem was, Walter, that I did it on my own. And I did it for about 16 to 17 months. And what I did was do nothing but not drink and or not drug. I did not work on the mental aspect of not drinking, not drugging at all. I didn't surrender. I still fought it. I became even more self-seeking, more selfish, more everything, because I didn't know how to live in your world. I didn't know how to live in a normal person's world. I only knew how to live in people that like to party every night that ended in a Y, and that took time. And Laura and I happened to have gotten into a little bit of an argument at one of our son's baseball games that following spring, a year later, where she said, "You just don't get it." And I didn't know that I wasn't just getting it, because I still was doing some pretty stinking thinking, and we argued. And finally, I got out of the car. She left, and I had to go to the bathroom, which was a good piece from the baseball field. So I drove to the high school, went into the bathroom, took my position at a urinal side by side, and there happened to be a dude next to me that I knew of. His son was playing with Matthew, and long story short, he looked over at me and goes, "Hey, the next time you and your wife, ex-wife, whatever you want to call her, decide to get in an argument, you ought to take a look at the car you're in." And I said, "Yeah, we're in a Sebring." He goes, "Yeah, even with the roof up, it's a Sebring convertible. Everybody heard everything you said. You ought to be ashamed of yourself." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's not how you talk to a woman, especially a woman as nice as your wife." And I was like, "Okay." He goes, did I hear that you're trying to quit drinking? And I said, yeah, I'm not trying. I'm doing it. He goes, really? How long you been sober? I said, about 17 months. He goes, going to any AA or recovery program or anything like that? I go, no, man, I'm a former professional athlete. He goes, oh, one of those. I said, yeah. I said, I'm a pretty disciplined individual. If I want something, I can do it. I can outwork you. And he said, it's not about outworking us. And I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, I've been sober for 8 years. He goes, it's not hard. It's not easy. He said, but if you want what I have and you're willing to go to great lengths to get it, I can show you how. He took me to my first AA meeting, which I had a misconception of all my life. You know, I'm thinking that these people are washed out, homeless, in the gutter, worse than me. And what happened was I go there and I listen to a lawyer talk. I listen to a pilot talk. I listen to a nurse talk. I listen to a doctor talk, an accountant talk, a mom talk, a dad talk. And they're all just telling their struggles, what it's all about, and how this book, this thing called the Big Book, has helped them get through it. And the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I said, hey, man, I think I want to take a look at this. And he said, well, start going to meetings then on your own. And I was scared, you know what-less. And I ended up at my first meeting. I was crying like a baby. And there was this lady comes up to me and she goes, honey, you're in the right place. And Miss Vicky was right. I was in the right place. And from that day on, that April day, I really went to work on my sobriety. And I really went to work, Walter, on changing the way I think, changing the way I perceive things. And that has been the golden nugget from the program. In other words, you know, as a kid, you know this little saying that I'm going to tell you right now. You've known it as a kid, but an alcoholic and a drug addict doesn't listen to it. You may never know when you're doing the right thing, but you know 100% of the time when you're doing the wrong.
Amen.
Sober people, normal people live by that. You know, alcoholics and drug addicts don't. We just don't. We don't understand how deep of a saying that is. We just kind of roll right through it, you know? When you start taking into account what other people might think of you, how people perceive you, how nice are you? Do you have any humility? Can you be trusted? You know, all of those things now, they start to surface as you start changing some of your things. You know, my wife, God love her, she's gone. She's no longer with us. She died from cancer, complications of cancer in 2020. But she'd always, you know, hit me with, do something nice today on my way out the door. You know, just do something nice. She wouldn't say what it was, you know, like, but if you think about it and you don't want a pat on the back, you don't need recognition for it, open the door for somebody tomorrow. How about just saying good morning with a smile on your face? Make eye contact and go, hey, how you doing? All of these little nicety things, you start putting them together and it starts to add up just like your days of sobriety do. And when you start seeing life in a different picture, a different perspective, a different vantage, a different prism, oh my God. And now you can form that relationship with God, because we go to AA meetings for spirituality and we go to church for religion, but there's a crossover, man. There's a crossover and it's great. Am I a biblical scholar? Hell no, I'm not. Not whatsoever. You know, I'm still learning, man. I'm just new into this. They say after about your third or fourth blackout, your mental maturation process stops. Well, if that in fact's the case, I think my third or fourth blackout happened when I was about 16. So I've been sober for 23, Walter. That means I'm a 66-year-old man in a 39-year-old body and a 39-year-old man. You know, so I'm really just now starting to learn some really cool stuff. That's why I'm probably going to be around till I'm 90. So
I can definitely tell you you're in fantastic shape mentally and physically. You'll be around till you're 100. And I have a question. I mean, my all these questions coming in, and the first question is from a mom, and she wants to know: do you share this, or do you share your experiences with your student athletes that you coach not only today but that have coached in the past? Is this something that you kind of utilize your past to help them with their future?
yes, but it's not something I beat my chest about. In other words, they know that I have had a problem drinking and a problem drugging. In fact, some of them have been lucky enough to hear some of the stories that I might have participated in at such a young age, right? Um, More so than that, I share with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I'll do my testimony to those folks, and obviously my team, my players are 100% invited in for that. I've done some work with Christian Businessman's Connection. I've done some just private speaking, to people and to Bible studies and things of that nature, where people just want to hear the story, how I got from what you said. How did I get from point A to point B, and then from point B to point C? And it really does require a great deal of honesty. So it's an ask, and I will tell. But I don't run around going, hey, I'm an AAer with 23 years sobriety. Listen to me. Here's how you do it. You fix it. The book's not written that way either. The book is written in a journal form that just takes you from point A to point B, point C, point D. But it kind of lets you know what I was thinking, what I was doing. When I look back on those things and retrospectively, let me ask you this, or let me just say this. People say, would you change anything, Walter?
I get asked that all the time. If I could, I would. I always, that's my stock answer.
And a lot of people would go, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm happy right where I'm at. And my answer is kind of twofold. If I had to do everything that I did to get to here, I wouldn't change it. But God knows, I would love to go back and try to play collegiate athletics and professional athletics sober. God knows I would like to fall in love and be the man I am now instead of the man I was then. God knows that I'd like to be the father that I am now versus the father I was then. God knows that I would rather be the employee I am now than the employee I was then. God knows that. And if he would allow me to change a second life, I would do that. But I would only do it for his honor. You know what I mean? And
so I know one person has just asked me this question. I want to make sure, because you just are touching on it now. With relation to, you write the book, you share your stories. Is it your hope? I kind of know the answer, but this person is, what is your hope by writing and sharing your story? And what do you hope it allows people that find their way to the book to do? Let's say someone doesn't have a drinking or drug problem. Is the story about perseverance and becoming, surrendering. I love that term personally. I don't want to go too deeply into the faith component, but what is your hope for those that do find their way to the book, and what do you want them to take away from the book?
Great question. And I think the book can answer a lot of questions for a lot of people, because there are just nuggets all along the way where people where you can identify with them. In other words, you may not have been I use this term lightly, but high class athlete that I was, right?
I wasn't. I know I wasn't.
But you might have done the things I did. You know what I mean? And it, with the exception of me being the right fielder, you might have been the stockbroker, right? Okay. Well, then what did I do? What did I finally do? Well, here's what I did. I became honest. That's the first thing that I want people to take away from this book. And how do you become honest? You have to practice it. You have to live that little saying I talked about. It's just not going to happen tomorrow if all of your life you've lived nothing but lies, man. I mean, it has to become part of your routine, and it takes time. And I mean, the one thing that AA has taught me is that if I strive for perfection, I'm going to go right back to drinking and drugging. But if I strive for progression, I got a chance. And I think that's what my life has become, a series of progressions. I've gotten better at listening. I wasn't a very good listener. I've gotten better at communicating. I probably wasn't a very good communicator back then. I've gotten much better at commitment. When I commit, I commit. I know what that's like. I'm responsible now. I don't think I was very responsible back then. I'm flexible. I'm accountable. All of these little energy sources that Michael Melnick, my best friend, talks about that are, apparent in great corporate cultures can be used in our own lives as well. And that's what I want you to take away from the book, that, hey, if this guy can do, if this, hey, come on, let's call me what it is. If this failure can turn it around,
I can turn it around. I will not classify any way, shape, or form you as a failure. Especially now, I thought I had done some background research prior to you and I talking a couple years ago, but a failure is one word I would not be able to put in the same sentence next to your name. I do have someone that's asking me if you would repeat how to receive the book with your signature on it. And I will put that in the description down below, not only here on the YouTube, but as well as the podcast. But how do people order the book through you so that you will sign that book to them?
Absolutely. Go to www.Tyner, which is my last name, Tyner, effect, EFFECT.com.
And they'll be able to use that link to get your book, and they can add whatever they would like you, however they would like you to sign or personalize the book.
I'm not sure there's a note section in there, but I'll do my best to personalize it if you can. It is my own website. It's where you can buy the book. It's where you can book me as a speaker if you'd like. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing. I mean, Reverend Helm asked me to write it, and I'll tell you how God works. So when I got the job with Towson, the book was about 85% complete, and it was going to be published by a group called Clyde Hill Publishing. And Greg Shaw, the owner of that company, and I had become very, very good friends. In fact, he was the first person to review any of the wordsmithing in the book, and he was very kind. He asked me 2 questions, Walter, when we got together the first time. He had 77 pages of just stock paper, but I'd never seen so many red marks on white pages of paper. And the only time I had was when I failed all of my writing classes at Miami. So I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. And he goes, I have 2 questions for you. And I said, okay, what? And he said, 1, is the stuff true? And I said, yeah, man, every word of it. And he goes, 2nd question, how the hell are you still alive? I said, grace of God. And he goes, keep writing. I think we got a book. So we wrote the book. And in 2017, it was not in the shape it is right now. And he said, if we launch this book right now, you'll lose your job that you've worked all your life to get. And I said, you're absolutely right. We're not going to do it. So it's sat on the shelf. And then obviously when my wife died, I really thought the whole thing was done. It was over. And then a little more than a year later, I'm driving, and Reverend Helm's wife calls me, a woman of God, Anita Helm. And she says, we talk, we laugh. And she said, it's the first time that anybody's made me laugh since Bill died. And I said, well, I'm glad I could do that. And she was getting ready to hang up. And she goes, oh, and by the way, I said, what's that? And she goes, you owe me a book. And I'm like, what? And she goes, you owe me a book. So break it out and start writing again and include what you've just gone through. And I said, she goes, that's part of your story now. So she goes, I'll help. And I said, you're crazy. What? You'll help me? How will you? She goes, send me what you got. So I sent her what I had. And she goes, you're right. You need a lot of help. This thing's terrible. And I said, okay. So between her and me, we built a book. We built about a 600-page book. And we sent that 600-page book to 10 people. And 10 people came back with, hey, too much sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You got to cut it down. You got to do this. You got to do that. So we did. We went into the studio, so to say, which was 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. because all of us had jobs. And one of the guys was Michael Melnick, my freshman roommate from my hometown, my best friend, my brother, his father. Without his father's financial help, Walter, none of this happens. So Michael said, I'll help you too. So I had the benefit of myself and two of the neatest writing authors I've ever had the opportunity to work with, Anita Helm and Michael Melnick. And that's what you're going to read. You're going to read my story with their help me writing it. And I'm telling you, I think it's in good shape. And I almost would say this. If I don't make you laugh, if I don't make you cry, if I don't make you think, man, give me a call. I'll buy the book back. I mean,
Well, I can tell you, you definitely hit nerves, and I don't think you'll be getting any requests for any money back. I do have a couple of parents that are asking a similar question, and I'm going to paraphrase it for you.
Mhm.
Wants to know, the parents would like to know, given your past addiction problems and those of your parents, how did you deal with that? And were you worried about passing that on to your daughter and son, your children?
The only time I really started to worry about that was when I was starting to get sober. And you're looking at, oh my goodness, what type of damage have I done? And that's when it became apparent that my kids were okay. I mean, my daughter didn't drink in high school, God love her, and I know she sampled stuff in college, but she's not that way. She's normal, and I'm like, whew, okay. The mother of two, she teaches nursing. She's a nurse by trade. She's got her master's in nursing, so she does the professor thing. And they're in Switzerland right now with her husband and two children. And yeah, she's the apple of my eye. And then my son is my son, man. He's a little bit like me. He's a little gregarious and enjoys a good time. But I mean, he runs for better words, a hedge fund, and it's he's the Shark Tank basically of a particular state, and he does a phenomenal job. And he's the father I always wanted to be, and when I listen to him speak and listen to him talk, there's so much education that he had, and his knowledge, to give you kind of an idea of who he is. We're driving into Chicago to meet my roommate's children, and Orangeburg or Cashman in the book, and his daughters. We're going to go to a hockey game, have dinner, and go to a hockey game. And I'm driving in, And I look at Chicago, the skyline, I go, think of all the money that's in that town. And he looks at me and he goes, think of all the knowledge that's in there too.
Ooh.
And I'm like, whoa, okay. Yeah. One for Matthew. I mean, and so and that's a great question. And I can't go back and change it. I just can't. The hangovers, the hurtings, the fly off the handle at the drop of a coin. I can't change that. But what I can do is I can start that day and move it forward, move the needle forward. And I can also do this now. I can identify with anytime I do something wrong, I know I have to make an amends right then. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect. The book is not perfect. I'm just saying that I realize when I might say something wrong that is damaging or hurtful, or do something wrong that is damaging or hurtful, my only recourse is to apologize and ask for a second chance and try to do it better the next time and not allow the same mistake to happen twice in my life. Because if I allow that to happen, I'm not having any growth.
Well, I can guarantee those of you that take the time, and I want to make sure I make this known, the book is also going to be available in Audible form, correct?
Yeah, I start doing that tomorrow. People want it in my voice, so I asked Matthew McConaughey, and he said, "No, I'm busy." And I think so.
So you're going to have to deal with the backup for Matthew McConaughey, Matthew Tyner Sr.
I don't think Matthew McConaughey actually knows who I am. So
you might lose a bet on that. I'm sure he's familiar from an athletic perspective. Coach, before we wrap up, and only because there's a bunch of people that really love your take, your opinion, just kind of riddle us all with regard to the college baseball. We, as you and I had talked about for the last couple of weeks, this will not be over or settled until the midpoint of the summer, if not just before students go back to college. What type of an opinion would you give to parents that have the 2025 or the 2026 high school graduates from your perspective? I know your perspective, not to panic, to find your fit, but just share some of the things that you might think would benefit parents at this particular time.
Boy, what a tough answer. And I'm going to try and give you, I'll go a little deeper tonight than I normally would. All right. We're in a situation here where everybody, the parents are feeling the pressure of trying to find a home for their son, and the coaches are feeling the pressure of having to win now and or win at all cost to, one, save their jobs, and two, possibly save their programs. For people that don't understand this new legislation, it's expensive. It's going to cost somebody some money if we want to be competitive at your cash business sports like football and basketball. And to compete at the highest levels of college baseball, those players are getting paid. It's getting more and more expensive. So it's winning at all cost, pretty much everywhere that you're looking at. So I guess if I'm a parent, I want you to put yourself in a coach's pair of shoes for just a moment and look at it from his lens or her lens. They've got to find the talent that is going to help them win now. And in doing so, it may be better for them to take a 22 or 23, or for that matter, 24-year-old college athlete with proven skills and take that over their high school junior or senior. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But here is the saving grace. If that is in fact what the college coaches decide to do, and we just shuffle the deck, one man's trash is another man's treasure, so to say. Okay? So let's just keep that in mind. Well, then where would your opportunities be? Probably at a lower level. Okay? Albeit Division II, Division III, low-level Division I, junior college. So what's wrong with starting your career there, doing exactly what I just told you college coaches are going to be looking for, and then taking your skill set to that Division I program that you want to play for, that may even be paying you by then to play for them after you have accomplished everything that you want to accomplish that would get you noticed by that college coach. The only reason that we don't want to do that is fear.
Bingo.
And that's it. I mean, it's fear. And I certainly understand it. We all want the guarantee. We all want the guarantee. And here's the ultimate flip side. Even if you're guaranteed a spot on that team that you, quote, want to go play for, the bright lights, the beautiful colors, the fans in the stands, you want to go play for that team. Well, here's a news nugget for you. If you're not producing, you will not be playing for that team very long. So which would you rather do? Come there as a young man making the largest transitional jump in your athletic career from 18 years old to playing with 22 to 24-year-old men, or would you rather go season yourself a little bit, get a little bit better, and then make that jump when you are a known and wanted commodity?
I think that's really the essence of the discussion. I think parents need to know a couple of other tidbits from the Division I perspective of those schools that I believe that opt in the fall. There would be a 38-man roster or student athlete roster that will have to be pared down by 4 to 34 by December 1st. So that's at a Division I level of those schools that opt in. Coach, you can interrupt me at any time. Also, a lot of schools, not just the CAA or Townsend, they haven't even announced their 2026 schedule, which is usually done by now with regard to travel arrangements and things of that nature. There are contracts that are signed and so forth. That has not been done yet. That will lead to speculation. There's no firm answer to this. There could be some realignments. Schools could opt out and end up out of a conference. There's lots of change still ahead. There are still topics as far as a 5th year of eligibility. There's a few finalizations that may take the next several months. But Coach, final topic that parents want your thoughts on specifically, and that is, do you think, or is your opinion that there will be a lot of moving parts, meaning moving student athletes, more so than any other year? And I'm assuming this is coming from the transfer portal perspective, but do you think a lot of athletes are going to just move for the sake of moving to cover themselves in case of a school opting out of the CAA, another school going down a division, et cetera? Do you think that will happen this year more than any other years in the past?
I told you this a long time ago. I said, there's 2 things that I think need to happen. 1, we need to redefine the word loyalty. And 2, we need to redefine the word commitment. Okay. And that's from my level too. I'm willing to work on that definition with anybody, anywhere, anytime, just so that we could find some commonality, right? The idea of mediocre baseball players jumping into the transfer portal does nobody any good. And unfortunately, it's the 5,000 or so that jump in the transfer portal are some of those players are the players that got 6 at bats. And it's the coach's fault that I didn't play. Well, you run a 7.860. You were here. We hope that you would have gotten better, but you didn't get better. Or you're the kid that, you got 14 appearances. Your ERA was 46. You walked 22 and you struck out 4. Your strike to ball percentage was 40 to 60, and you decided you're going to transfer. No, what you should have done was work your ass off at the school you're at, and try to get better there. Because those kids that go into that transfer portal, unfortunately for those guys, they're not going to find a home, and their career may be over. So I just really caution some players to well, I'm going to jump into the transfer portal. Well, you really ought to take a look at what you've got your hands on first and really, really digest that. Is it better for me to stay here, try to work here, try to break into the lineup here, try to get better here, maybe buy into what the coaches are saying, or do I listen to the voices in my head? Do I listen to the biggest fans that I've got that says, you should be playing, you should be playing, you should be playing. Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Doesn't know what he's talking. And move. And you have that prerogative, certainly. But I just wish some of the transfer portal people, before they jump into the transfer portal, really take a look at what they've got.
I tend to get this question always the day after, but I'm getting it live here tonight. And so rather you answer this than me make an opinion. Will your recruiting philosophy change with regard to high school athletes? Will you still look to bring in high school athletes? Is Division I baseball going to be for the older experienced players in the minor leagues, for lack of a better term, going to be the Division II, the NAIA, the Division III at the NCAA level? Has your position as a staff, will it change now going forward?
I think we'll have to make some changes for sure. More baseball games, more summer collegiate baseball games will start to be watched. At our particular university, with 8 scholarships, and I don't see that number moving up, we have to be very, very careful with what we offer, correct? You're going to have to be a game changer from high school to be able to play for us or on scholarship. I mean, there might be a roster spot for you. And the other thing is you got to look at it from that perspective. There's only 34 bodies now. There used to be 40.
Right.
Development might take a little bit of a back seat, unless you're a program like me. The mid-major is going to have to develop some. So I'm going to stick with, my 33% high school, 33% JUCO, 33% transfer portal. And because I think we as a university have to have that blend. The problem becomes is if we develop that freshman who turns into a sophomore and he's hitting 326, he's not staying at Towson. He's going to be pillaged and pulled from us. So it's a little tougher than you think, because people want to know what we're recruiting right now. Well, we've got 5 guys that we like, and they're coming, but we'll have about 9 holes to fill. If right now we're halfway through it, right? We're 29 games in. Right now, if I project who's going to leave versus who might actually leave, I've got to be doing that right now as well. And that's not easy to do, Walter. That's I don't have a crystal ball. You know what I mean? And at 29 games in, I don't want to walk up to Walter Beede and go, "Hey, by the way, you're hitting 340 today. Are you thinking about transferring?" I mean, right?
Right. I mean, that's the reality. And I think that is a situation that a lot of coaches that are in your position are feeling okay, if I get the younger guy, I develop him, and then he becomes a player. And then the world of, hey, bright lights, big city, and big dollars comes calling. I think these are topics that we're going to be discussing in more detail when clarity and when things begin to get I don't know if we'll get finalization, but there'll be probably a more of a greener kind of focus come April 7th, Coach? Is that when?
That's what we've still heard, that the ratifying is going to take place, and we're opting in. So as a conference, the CAA is in, and at least as of today, I'm not going to say things don't change, but as of right now, we're opting in with 34 as our roster heading into the spring of 26, and 38 on the field. And the one unknown quantity is, okay, what about red shirts? How are we going to treat these folks? You know, could they actually come back on and push a guy off? And, you know, can we move? You know, is there an injured reserve, so to say?
Right.
So that to me, that's yet to be determined. I haven't heard those hard, fast facts regarding that. So, you know, and I think you're right. For everything I'm being told, everybody is cost conscious right now, and smarter minds are going to prevail here. And maybe not next year, but within the next 5 years, there's going to be some realignment, because we just can't operate like this. You know, I mean, you can't have mid majors taking 4 or 5 airplane trips, you know,
right.
25,000, 30,000 hours a pop, unless they're fundraising. But sooner or later, those wells are going to run dry too, you know. So I hope and pray that we haven't killed the golden goose, you know, by some of this. But and you know as well as I do, what it'll full circle, right? We'll do all of this, and then all of a sudden somebody will come up and go, enough, we're not paying the players anymore. Okay.
Right. I mean, sooner or later, there's going to be someone fiscally conscious doing feasibility studies 5 years out, and they're going to just say this is going to absolutely implode. Let's get ahead of it, and let's, you know, add some bumpers to this bowling alley. But, you know, right now, I still think, you know, first of all, Coach Tyner, you know, obviously makes himself available in a variety of different ways. And I encourage you to reach out not only to Coach Tyner, but the entire staff if you have interest. Obviously, looking at the comments and looking at my messages, we have lots of people that would love to play for Coach Tyner. But the reality is Division I athletics, the CAA, and I always say this to parents, I do not like the term mid-major. Division I baseball, I can sit in Brookline, Mass. I can go to Baltimore, Maryland. I can go to, you know, South Carolina, North Carolina. I can go up and down the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic. Quality baseball. And watching Townsend work, you know, against Northeastern, you know, quality baseball. But you have to have ability, and you have to be able to execute. Everybody would love for everybody to be successful, but Division I athletics is about execution. And those that can play, those that don't play often. And then you have to be able to understand that 34-man roster means 9 on the field at a time. Understand your role, excel in your role. But we're going to have plenty of opportunities to speak to Coach Tyner. Everybody here is asking how to get in touch with Coach Tyner. TYNER.effect.
No, Tyner Effect together.com.
One word. Okay. TynerEffect.com. That's how you reach Coach Tyner directly, not only with regard to the book, but for speaking engagements and then everything to do with Townsend. You can go on to the website. There's all of the information. I'm going to have all of that information as far as college recruiting will be with Townsend, and anything to do with the book and speaking engagements will be for Tyner Effect. I get lots of people trying to have access. You're very welcome. Coach, everybody is saying great interview, fantastic. Looking forward to the book. It's mid-season, parents, and I don't want to take advantage of Coach Tyner's time. He was running late today at a game. You know, he had a camp. So this is a lot to ask of a coach during midseason. But Coach Tyner, as always, 100% fantastic. Fast and Hard by Matthew Tyner Sr. I've read the book. Others here have read the book. Yes, it is available on Kindle. Correct, Coach? On Kindle?
I apologize, Walter. I've got a manager that helps me do Anita, and they tell me it's Kindle, it's Barnes and Noble, it's Amazon, it's you think of a book distributor, and that's where it will be. But I can't autograph those. I can't put anything in that book. That comes from the shipping house, the distribution centers. I have a pretty good supply here at my house, and I would happily do that for anybody that buys one from
Okay, the librarian. Thank you, lab librarian. He or she just looked. It is on Kindle, which means you have an ebook that you want to take it with you on a flight. Everybody is saying, and when I say everybody, Coach, I'm talking about 800 people currently sending messages. Love you as always. Coach is great. Can't wait to get the book. Coach Tyner, best of luck to the Tigers and the CAA going forward, and best of luck with the book, Fast and Hard, From Addictions to Redemption by Coach Matthew Tyner Sr. Coach, thank you so much.
Walter, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
You having me on.
Now, on Thursday, folks, we'll be talking with Brett Young at Charleston Southern, recruiting coordinator. We're going to cover a little bit more in depth with some of the changes in Coach Young's perspective, but we'll have Coach's Corner on Thursday. I look forward to seeing you there. If you like tonight's discussion, please hit the thumbs up. Give us a comment on the YouTube channel. It really helps us grow. Thanks again, Coach.
Thank you, sir. And thanks for all those people out there.